My name is Stephanie. Although I've been a citizen of Fort Myers and Lee County for the past 35 plus years, I am currently up in Michigan taking care of my 80 and 90-year-old parents. But I did want to take some time out today and just talk a little bit about the election and Amendment 4 that's happening in Florida and just the general society. I think it's so important that we be engaged in this process. So I wanted to take some time to do that. So, as I said, I've been in Lee County for 35 plus years. I raised three kids. I now have five grandkids. Been married, employed down there, and had a great life. But I'll tell you, as anybody who listens to me or is watching this video now knows, when you are raising kids, you don't have time to pay a lot of attention to politics or what's going on in the world. You know, you're so in the weeds. And I used to, as my kids were younger, I'd research maybe a little bit about the different politicians that were running, and I'd go out and vote and didn't really think much about it. And Everything was going great until about 2015. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. 2015 was kind of a crazy year for me. First of all, I got sick. I ended up becoming disabled. So I was home, no longer working. And my kids were grown. That was the good news. I got them up and out of the house. But then Donald Trump came on to the world stage, and I was stunned. I could not believe that this man had received the nomination to be the GOP presidential nominee in 2015. But I was 100% all in for Hillary, and I wasn't too worried about it. I was collecting my Medicare, Social Security, having a good life, and then election day came and went, and I was as surprised as everybody else. Donald Trump won the election. I don't know how he did it. I was so surprised. And the thing that really struck me was that the day after we found out that Trump won, my 25-year-old daughter came to my house and she said, "What are we going to do, Mom? What what can we do?" And uh, I'm ashamed to say I didn't have an answer. And that was the first time as a mother I couldn't tell my daughter that it was going to be okay, because honestly, I didn't know if it was going to be okay. So I just said to her, "I don't know." And I wasn't real happy with that answer, but that was the only answer that I had. So life continued on. Um, we started to see the world unfolding. The guys with the tiki torches going around. Um, all this racism and misogyny. I didn't even know what the word misogyny meant. And I'm a college graduate, but I had never heard of it because I was raised in the 60s and 70s. And I guess that's just the way things were. And I was fine with it. So I started to read about what was going on. You know, I subscribed to some newspapers. I started looking out on social media, became real active on Twitter. I was already active on Facebook, but Twitter suddenly became important to me. And I was amazed at how awful people were being. And I guess the lesson that we learned is that we have a lot of people out there that are racist. And I'm sure a lot of people know that already. But because I was a white woman, I never paid attention to it. It really didn't impact me. But they were. And I started to see this war on women and on non whites being waged in social media, on the news, on these different things that were going on in the world. And I didn't understand. I was so confused. So, I started to um, really get angry at the way women were being treated. If you think back to when Trump was first elected, and Kathy Griffin held up that head as a joke. The joke was in poor taste. I'll give it to the world. Maybe it wasn't the best use of comedy, but she thought it was funny, and maybe her followers thought it was funny, and that's great. But she shouldn't have been doxxed. She should not have had her life threatened, and the FBI show up to her house over a joke. But here were some things that were clearly happening in the federal government. They were using the FBI to go after Kathy Griffin when she simply put something out there. Trump was very worried about, his past and the different people that maybe he had hurt. And, he was calling women horse face and different things like that. And I was just amazed that a person like this could be a president. So I continued to read, and the more I read, I guess the more woke I became. And I know a lot of people who maybe think differently than me, think that the word woke is a problem. I personally don't. I think that woke, if you look up the definition, it talks about just being aware of what is happening in the world around you. So I was becoming more and more aware and more angry. And then kind of one of my turning points was when Justice Kavanaugh started going through his hearings, was he going to become a justice or not? And Christine Blasey Ford came on in the hearings and started talking about her past with him. And granted, it was in high school, but I related to that story because something similar happened to me when I was a junior in high school. And, I went to Catholic schools my whole life. It was a small Catholic school. And I tried to handle that situation the best way possible because I was sexually assaulted when I was a junior in high school by members of the football team. I went to somebody who was the athletic director of my high school, and nothing was done. Unfortunately, I didn't feel that I could go to my parents, so I just lived with it my whole life without even thinking it impacted me or anything. But suddenly, here I was watching the hearings, and that woman was telling my story, and it was shocking. So that's when I thought, it's got to be more than just me watching and tweeting and putting things out on Facebook. I've got to do more. So I joined the Florida National Organization of Women. I didn't attend meetings at that time, but I started contributing what money I had to different Democratic candidates, and wanted to make sure that I gave as much as I could. But as I mentioned, I was disabled at the time and having some health issues, and I really couldn't get out there. So, I just, I was struggling with what to do, continued to move on. But as I started to give money and started to receive these emails from the National Organization of Women, I realized that there was a place for me. And I started going to meetings. Thankfully, Biden won in 2020. He took office, and of course, we had January 6th, which was just so once again shocking. And I guess the thing that I learned is that Trump gave people permission to really just misbehave and go out there, and they were going to take over the government. And I was just stunned. It was clearly a war on women. And furthermore, Christian nationalism was taking over our government. They were passing book bans, and it was just a war on any education. And the one thing that I always knew is that education, if you educate people, and I'm not talking about going to college necessarily, that's not a path for anybody, but just educating people through news, through social media, through whatever it is, however people get their news, even on TikTok. Make sure that you can inform the people, and through that, people can become educated. They can become empowered. So, I continued to give money, and then when they overturned Roe, um, that was just too much for me. That was the end. I could picture my daughters needing this important health care, my granddaughters, maybe even my grandson. If they're starting with abortion, what's going to be next? I didn't know. You look at what happened with Kate Cox in Texas. I don't know if you remember her, but she desperately wanted a child and started to have some issues. Went to the hospital because she was bleeding, and she was, I don't know how pregnant she was, but she was far along and desperately wanted that child. And she couldn't get the health care that she wanted. So for those of us that thought, okay, no abortion, so we have plan B in place. We can take the pill afterwards if we realize that we either had unprotected sex, or we knew we needed birth control. Um, but this was something different, right? This was Kate Cox having to get in her car after the doctor told her that they could not give her the health care she needed, which was an abortion. Um, she had to drive to a different state. She had to drive from Texas to Colorado. Now, I want to tell you, being a person who is disabled, I have had to go to Tampa General in Florida to find a doctor that's going to meet my needs. And you know what? It's 2 hours. And I get mad every time I have to go up there. I'm tired. I'm maybe not as present and engaged in that medical appointment because I'm tired. I just drove 2 hours. Imagine being in the process of losing that child, knowing that you are about to lose possibly your own life because of this, and you've got to drive 24, 48 hours to get the health care that you needed. And these are procedures that are scientifically proven to be safe and effective to save a person's life. And the politicians have decided, you know what, we know better than science. They're allowing any churches or people who are just against it, that they are getting into our government, and they're telling this woman, you can't have the health care you need. And suddenly she has to go somewhere else to get that health care. And it's not right. So at that point, I knew I had to do more. I started to attend some meetings with Yes on Four, the Yes on Four initiative, which is kind of a coalition of a bunch of different women's groups. And they are fighting to make abortion legal in the state of Florida. Right now, we have a 6-week ban, and it's 6 weeks is not enough. Many women don't know that they're pregnant until at least a month, maybe 2 or 3 after they first were impregnated. So it's a problem with a 6-week ban. And even if the special exceptions for rape, it's what they make you go through, these loops that you have to jump through to get the healthcare that you need. It's not right. So as I said, I started to attend meetings with that coalition, as well as becoming more active in the National Organization for Women in Lee County. And we, as part of NOW, we advocate for human rights. We support policies that empower women, and that is through healthcare, education, social justice, racial justice, focusing in on LGBTQ things, and I'm just doing what I can. I'm also going to the Lee County Democrat's office, and I used to have a fairly stressful job when I worked and had a lot of responsibilities. But there is nothing like going into that Democrat office and just sitting down with a bunch of people and writing postcards to people telling them, you know what, you got to vote. You got to vote, and you got to make sure that you're signed up for vote by mail just in case something happens to you. I've also stuffed envelopes for the people who are canvassing neighborhoods. And regardless of what, any time that you want to spend, if you want to spend an hour a week, if you want to spend 40 hours a week doing things. And I don't want to go out canvassing. It makes me too nervous. I also have mobility issues, so I can't get out and walk. So any pre-work that I can do that can help the cause, that's what I'm doing. So, we have to win this race. We have to have Kamala be in the White House. If we don't, we're not. You've heard Donald Trump. We're not voting again. This November, we are voting to decide if we want to vote or not. That's what it's coming down to. Do you want to have a say in the federal government? Do you want to have a say in your local government? We know in Florida, they're fighting us. The Christian nationalists are in charge with Ron DeSantis. The Knights of Columbus funding the Amendment 4 and any of the ops saying no. They're going to our county commissioner's office in Collier County and Lee County, and they're letting people talk about how bad abortion is. And folks, it's a medical procedure. This is not a thing about church. This is not somebody going into the hospital saying, I hate Christians and I want this baby taken out. These are not careless people. These are people that need a medical procedure. And the county commissioners are spending time trying to convince people that it's a bad thing, and it's not. So, we have to get out there and we have to fight. And as I think about my daughter's question about what now, Mom, and my answer to her now, from 2015 to 2024 is get involved, engage yourself, find your people, and fight the battle, because we cannot go back. You've heard Kamala say, we are not going back, and we can't. So at the end of the day, I just want my daughters, my granddaughters to know that I'm here and that I fought for their rights, for everybody's rights. And if I do that, I might be disappointed in November, but at least I can sleep that night because I know that I gave it my all.